I think very hot, then maybe meditation, cold, hell round. Very cold and hot hell round. Sanje chodam chodam chanama janju gadu dani yapchi gadu chujenge sonamji jola panju sange joba sanje chodam chodam chanama janju gadu dani yapchi gadu chujenge sonamji jola panju sange joba sanje chodam chodam chanama janju gadu dani yapchi gadu chujenge sonamji jola panju sange joba tayata gate para sangate bodhisattva Tayata kate para sangate bodhisattva Tayata kate para sangate bodhisattva Tayata kate para sangate bodhisattva 심지어 탐지고도 토달라나 마치고 산재에 공부하는 뭐지 진짜 토바차 대체도 자주서가 라잖아 추치도 나서는데 나와래 신고 집어를 튀어버려 퇴제쇼 많어 가지고도 다른 가수도 장군을 송가고 집을 라면 집을 사재게 되는 대체 주민이 상담체.
And so we set our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment by perfecting all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. You know that to perfect those trainings I must have a thorough understanding of them, and I gained that understanding on the basis of a perfect, unmistaken presentation. And so it is with this motivation in mind that I come to listen to a brief explanation on the stages of on the outlines of the stages of the path to enlightenment as composed by the great Lama Tsongkhapa. Gyatang Abjungachika, so the Samden Gipashin. Also the younger, also the Samdengi party, the some the Shesas on the Gyatang Ngachungachik.
가서 디카소래 제타 가서 지금 장주게 셈 게다 가서 셈 게네 쥐발라고 쥐발라라베 되는 지소 파진 조다는 되게 보실라고 요래 다 지소 파진 조다 다 가서 집어 다 집어다 추진다 아니 쇠바 아니 가서 돼 가서 돼 등에서 시럽지 다 가서 지금 배지 등에서 가도 레터 인사를 거든
So that upon the generation of the mind of enlightenment, the mind of bodhicitta, we are thereafter encouraged to engage in the activities relevant to the continuation, the development of that mind of enlightenment, namely the 6 perfections and the 4 ways of accumulating disciples. We have been looking at the 6 perfections, being the perfection of generosity, the perfection of ethical conduct, the perfection of patience, the perfection of joyous perseverance, of meditative concentration, and of wisdom. And we had somewhat discussed up as far as and somewhat inclusive of the 5th of these, the perfection of meditative concentration.
chebolda shemu wacha je nyerange tebala ta nyerange tebal ke ne namne chige chine ane je tenga zidi ke chbo cha tegi do tenga zidi ke chbo cha kasana kasoda ta je chujumje tenga zenje shera lam laba som sigwa lam laba som nyamso lane ta kaso ta de ne go yorwa ta 탐지 좀 도발은 다 shemu over ta what in the tenga zidi shows ke chbo cha do what in the chat
So this quality of meditative concentration or meditative stabilization is of course not exclusive just to the Mahayana presentation of the path, but is of course vital to the path as presented by the hearers and the solitary realizers as well. And as indeed when you look at the three trainings referred to as ethical conduct, meditative stabilization and wisdom. So it's quite central to all those the different vehicles of Buddhism.
Someday, Tangundi was Subashiva, Nambata, Navachi, and the Caesar, that's Sumekan Lasova, the Kevalaya, think it's quite a one. Think it's quite a that thing is Mevaina, Kiawati Dubaina, Kiawati, because Dube had a milky mento, Sungabe, that Sumekan K to Mado. Suga the Sumekan Kevala, Nevato, think it's in go to one. That Tavatovala and Shem, Tamjikatovala and Shem, what it is.
Not only that, but of course the quality of meditative concentration is really quite important, if not central, to many different attainments, many different paths. So that within the presentation of the three realms of existence, for example, we have the form or the desire realm, and the form realm and the formless realm. Well, to actually attain rebirth in either of the form or formless realms, one must have generated meditative concentration. It is by the means of meditative concentration that we lay down the causes to be reborn, and that's why, for example, the form realm is described in terms of its different levels in terms of concentrations, and even the formless realm similarly so up to the peak of cyclic existence. And so in terms of any aspiration to be reborn in form or formless realms, one needs to develop meditative concentration and indeed to attain liberation or the omniscient state of enlightenment. Of course, meditative concentration is absolutely crucial. And indeed, one can look at it from a different angle to say that if we haven't got meditative concentration, all virtues that we accumulate will only result in rebirths within the desire realm within cyclic existence. That quality of virtue must be combined with meditative concentration to have a rebirth within even the form or formless realms of cyclic existence. So there's no need to mention that meditative concentration is absolutely vital if one wants to aim higher in terms of attaining liberation from cyclic existence or indeed the omniscient state of enlightenment itself.
Because of the Sungabel Halik, the Sungabel has a sort of gay in Baina, and because of the things in communicate, things in communicate. That because of the Kajet things of Combo there, that's same in 개와주 두바 임바 이나야 개와주 두바 임바 이나야 development 게투고요 말이야 다 되베라 되베비 되베시 게투고 봐 조어진다 수준 시소 수준면은 요야 말봐 수준 시소네 아니 즉 어디가 제 어디를 센다 되바 제 게투 다되네 수준 시소잖아다 되바 게 아니 교양 통제네 아니 송가봐 라 아니 연대 통네 제제도 아니 되게 조금어도 아니 다들 지금 뭐 이제다 되발을 되자 쇼쇼 아니 되발을 되자 문조가 매바 차원도 자원에다 방구요 말때는 다 문조가 매바 차원도 아니 되발을 마게지 송가발 게도다 다 송가발에 송가 다 가서 삼대 당부 니바 수바 시바다 삼대 당부게 라게데 니발의 연대 통원도 전에 아니 땡에서 건도 아니 삼대 니발의 게 교자 니발의 다 수발인데 인더스트리 되기도 다 뭐죠? 타바 되는 얘기가 쓰게 다 커와 감성 가밖에 봐 있네 동해거라 제대샤 아니 디 교티 아니 단지 말이 말이샤 아니 디 년보때 담에 또 베셔라비샤 디자 담에 또 베셔라 아니 마게 밖에 봐 관에 건도 되네 아니 모습도 또 받지 못도 아니 가르기로 또 되기도 다 탐제 잡아 줘도 다 라주고 코아 거서 타입에 맞게 subject 탐제자 아니 머리바디 지기도 대자 타이어 마게 심지 탐지게도 산지 고바 되는 니베셔도 다까지 너무 바빠 와서 맞아 세제 집에 방국도 산 고마도 아니 탐지 집에 줄어 좋고도
So that yes, the virtues accumulated with distraction will result in, or can result in, a rebirth in the desire realm as a desire realm celestial being or a desire realm human being. So it is, and this of course is based on principally ethical conduct. So it's the virtues related to ethics that lead to these kinds of rebirths. And if we wanted to attain a rebirth in the form realm, that such virtues must be accumulated without distraction. And that's where the power, the focused power of a meditative concentration or stabilization comes in. So that's the quality or the extra layer that's necessary for those imprints or those causes to give rise to a rebirth in the form or formless realms. So that in terms then of processing or proceeding through from form from desire realm through form realm to formless realm, the practitioner begins to acquaint themselves, familiarize themselves, first of all, with the faults inherent in a rebirth, for example, even as a desire realm celestial being or human being, and aspires to what they regard as having greater qualities, such as first concentration within the form realm, and it's through thereby diminishing the likelihood of creating causes for the former and increasing the likelihood of creating causes for the latter, namely developing one's meditative concentration, that one then attains perhaps that first layer, first level of the form realm, that first known as the first concentration. And then it proceeds like that as the person refines their meditative concentration, they begin to see the quality of bliss, etc., that they are experiencing as unsatisfactory, and then want to see what's available or what's proposed in the second concentration as more subtle, more desirable, and they aspire to attaining the causes to be experiencing that second concentration. So we're looking at like one's current situation or former situation with fault, and seeing quality in one's kind of like aspiring or latter situation, that one proceeds through the concentrations from 1 to 4 and further into the formless realms up to the state of known as the peak of cyclic existence. But in terms of the Buddhist perspective, one of course is wants to habituate to seeing all of that, any of the 3 realms, in other words, all of cyclic existence, as being in the nature of suffering. And so it is fault laden to begin with. And so one's objective is to attain a liberation from that. So in seeking out the causes for what keeps us in cyclic existence, namely its root cause of self-grasping or grasping at the true existence of a self-entity, and cultivating the direct antidote to that, the selflessness or emptiness of such an entity, that one cuts through the root cause of cyclic existence, is able then to attain liberation from cyclic existence. And from the Mahayana perspective, one further expands on that greatly by recognizing how all kind mother sentient beings are actually in the same boat. We're all in the same kind of suffering reality, and that it isn't enough to attain liberation for oneself alone, but one must find and practice a path that is able to facilitate the liberation of all sentient beings from that. And so this requires not only the eradication of what's known as the deluded obscurations, but also the obscurations to omniscience. And so one seeks out a path to attain a full enlightenment.
산제 군조 켈레바 최 군조 켈레바 긴도 군조 산제 잡던 뭐 잡노스 최 군조 최라 잡서 좋아라 되는 심지를 뇌세 맞지 봐서 정도 다 심지를 뇌세 맞지 봐도 지당도 조다지 심지를 뇌세 자원이 맞지 다 대바 전부게 뇌세 맞지 봐서 마세 딜라 편바 주비치 레고도 뇌세 맞지 봐서 마세 딜라 편바 주비치 레고도 다 랑게 제제 탐제 타마 우당의 양제는 심지를 편바 주비치 그와 어디든지 제제 심지를 돈 주어지고 또 되네 아니 다 되네 가르고도 어느 대바치 붙여 그냥네 제에서 좀 도구도 나 대바치 뭐 일라봐 좀 편도구도
So when we speak of Mahayana, it is a path that is defined by one who practices for the sake of others, for the benefit of others. And that emphasis must be complete to qualify with that everything one does is with that Mahayana spirit. And so, for example, that what defines those who regard themselves as a Buddhist is that sense of refuge, taking refuge in the triple gem, in the Buddha as the one who shows us the path, in the Dharma as the actual path, in the Sangha as those who are exemplify and lead us on the path, and to kind of like and then kind of the main prerogative in terms of the Dharma as the actual path, is to not engage in any harm to any living being. But from the Mahayana point of view, that is expanded upon to say that it's not only not to harm any living being, but actually we must use every opportunity and every means at our service to try to be of benefit to sentient beings, from kind of like the risking or giving of our lives to every breath that we take should be for the benefit of others. So it's kind of like a life that is completely steeped in an altruistic emphasis, where we're constantly thinking of, enacting, manifesting ways in which to be of service, of benefit to others. And so it's not just a case of saying I am a Mahayanist. That doesn't make you a Mahayanist. One must look at what really counts as the Mahayana spirit or the Mahayana attitude.
가서 나랑 쪽에 아니 지금 나랑 소소 레뉴게 시원체데 레뉴게 시원체 임바인데 아니 카도데 편토 토마토도 나줘봐요 그래 이나야 뭐서 편토마토는 유튜브도 봤지 나는 뭐서 편토는 마음을 토토에 유튜브도 봤지 보고도
So that on the one hand, we have like a direct means of being able to be of benefit to others, and of course there are many and varied ways to be directly beneficial to others. But of course, because karma and mental afflictions play a very large part in that, not least of which that we are ourselves operating out of karma and mental afflictions, and so that there may be hindrances in being able to be directly beneficial all the time. Yet indirectly we can also engage in many ways that may only manifest in the future, but this is also part of the responsibility following the Mahayana attitude.
단단 말아서 뭐서 편도 토마토도 나서 좀 그래. 되고 유여다. 유여다. 이내야 나랑 그 단단게 랭겐저도 그 responsible 랭겐저한테 다 무엇만 윤에다 같이 저거 다 저가서도 편도도 유튜브 보고도 유튜브 봐이나 아니 대본 하시고 영화들 그 대본을 샘제 좀 말아 봐. 유튜브 가르쳐면서 제주는 유튜브 좀 대봐이나 대본도 그 대본 유의 제도 장화 인바 인상 아니 그 가서 랑슈고 영화들 그래. 샘제 좀 말아 랑슈고 영화. 다 유라도 하나 맞아 봐이나 유가라 인바 셰베토네 아니 맞아 봐이나 아니 대본을 대화 잡아이나 똥 말아 봐. 똥 말아.
Yes, and so that it's obvious that our attempts to directly benefit others will have varied results because of that element of karma and mental affliction that is constantly present. Yet our commitment as Mahayanists should be to do whatever we can directly or indirectly to be of benefit. And when we speak indirectly, we're talking about creating the causes that will bring about beneficial results in the future. And it's so important to have that sort of commitment to creating the cause, even though there may be a long-term sort of investment, that it's important to understand that there is this incontrovertible relationship between cause and effect. That if the causes are present, then the effect has no choice but to ripen. And so this is what we need to base our faith on in terms of creating those causes. And so if the cause is there, the result will follow. If we just talk about it but do nothing to create the causes, then we can't really hope for that result of benefit to ever come about. And so what we're talking about is behaving, acting in harmony with the reality of the situation, by seeing what the reality of the situation, by thereafter tailoring our actions to harmonize with that. And this is the only way really to proceed. And so that's we must not simply say, oh, look, I've been trying my best to practice, I've been doing my best to do this, but nothing good seems to happen out of it. There's no need to worry in that regard, that once the causes are being laid down, if they're laid down correctly, they will definitely, inevitably result in a benefit. And that we know this because of the very nature of impermanence itself, that nothing remains as it is. Everything is constantly in a state of change. And so what is happening, even though it's not manifest to our consciousness, our awareness now, it is the causes are building, and they will lead inevitably to that result if we continue with the process of accumulating those causes. And we must understand that this has been the case for all those who have ever engaged in the path, and those who we look upon now, and the great masters and holy beings of the past, who we revere and consider to be very sacred now, that this was the case for them. They didn't start off in a way that was naturally very, very beneficial. They also had these moments where doubt and so on, having to continue, persevere, creating causes that would lead to those particular results. And so they persisted in collecting those results, continuing to collect those results, and so transform not only themselves but their own reality. So that therefore we really need to constantly understand, okay, I'm a human being, I have that which distinguishes us from any other sentient being, and that is a human intelligence. Therefore, I kind of readdress my efforts, my focus to concentrate on accumulating every tiny virtue that I can, and through avoiding and abandoning every, even what I consider an insignificant non-virtue, as much as I possibly can. And at one time, this process, this life will result, it will manifest in a very powerful ripening result. This is the nature of the law of cause and effect. And so here we engage in every single act, whether it's the accumulation of tiny virtues, the abandoning of even tiny non-virtues by generating a motivation, ensuring that we have all the causes and conditions available, our thinking sorted out, engaging in the action, finishing with a very pure emotive dedication, and so on. And so laying down causes like that, which definitely will result in very powerful results in the future. And this can be seen in terms of even an external examples of cause and effect relationship. When we take a tiny seed, we place it in the ground, we have good soil, we have good fertilizer, we have rain, we have water, we have looking after that seed. It germinates, it sprouts, it grows eventually into a very huge tree with branches, leaves, fruit, and so on. And we can't imagine that such a tiny seed would give life to such a great mass eventually. But it is even more the case in terms of internal cause and effect. When we lay down small causes, they will result over time in huge results. And so it's important to be aware of that, and that when we get it right in terms of enacting our virtues, eradicating our non-virtues, that ultimately these results will, of course, arise in harmony with the causes that we have laid down, but our habituation now will become effortless and spontaneous.
대화 집에 쪽에 남네 저도 다 대부 봐도 뭐 시험을 가서 미 타이바 심제 탐제래. 좋아? 미 타이바 심제 탐제. 아니 타이바 심제 탐제 그때도 다 타이바 심제 탐제 아니 동네 탐제도 저와 대화 탐제도 저도 그저 던지 가서도 대인도 다 간자 저기 아니 저거 초양 다 개발에 개발 산제가 고바 마도 봐도 아니 사기 있으면 탐제제 좋은데 그 누가 현다 민다 좋아 다 줘봐. 다 줘봐. 제부 봐도 말고 미유 심제 타이바 좋아. 와. 아니 제부데 아니 비가서도 동네 탐제도 대화 탐제도 대 심제 찍니 말 심제 타이바. 와. 다 네가 건강을 민데 제가도 그 제부 봐도 말고 용해야 되고 춘이로 와.
So in terms of the Mahayana reality, one is that the kind of the focus is vast in terms of being all sentient beings, countless sentient beings. The objective is itself countless in terms of eradicating all the suffering of all those sentient beings and establishing all those sentient beings in happiness. And so when you are dealing with such measureless effort, focus, objectives, then one can assume that the result also will be commensurate with that focus and that effort, and it of course will be vast and significant in terms of attaining the state of liberation, attaining the omniscient state of enlightenment itself. So this is a natural relationship. This is an obvious and natural progression.
산제 코리아 산게 심제라 때는 산게도 심제라 때는 산게와 연자 산게 심제도 시고 개치고 차되기도 개정다 산제게 안에 배지 지소 파진주도 도연 모부시를 라베데 랍사가 유디 심제제도 좋아 다 근데 이 말이자 심제의 시고지 개치고 찌네 안에 데라 편바 주바이나 산제 탐제라 편바 주베기 차되기도 먼저 시베团的 중국도 말도 먼저 성자 상계를 잡수 제가 심지어서 도나시라 말이에요. 한 하도도 알아서 지금 남주 지금 저와 유에 되겠는데 아니 지금 나게당 차도다 세당체서 소로저 너무께서 유소로 차와나 아니 방도 쉽죠 봐. 최제스는 다 미스 초라 중소로 차기도 와. 삼사지고도
And so, in terms of our practice, we need to be able to see sentient beings as the most important focus or ground for our practice. It's kind of like very interesting that those who have this faith in the Buddha and like make offerings to the Buddha with that kind of faith, and at the same time really dismiss or ignore or look down on sentient beings. Now it's very questionable whether you're really making an offering to the Buddha. But if you concentrate on being of benefit to sentient beings, then you are automatically making an offering to the Buddha. Because after all, the Buddha attained the state of enlightenment on the basis of sentient beings. The Buddha trained in the path, developed perfected the 6 perfections, the 4 ways of accumulating disciples, within the ground of sentient beings. It's kind of like sentient beings were the basis on which he was able to accumulate those causes to attain enlightenment. And so you can see that sentient beings are kind of central to the notion of enlightenment, the state of Buddhahood. And so any act of benefit towards sentient beings is in a way acknowledging that, and so is of course an offering to the Buddhas. And so it's really important for us to really recognize that. And so one can it's important, yes, to go for refuge to the Buddha, to recognize the Buddha as the teacher and so on, but if it remains as that, some sort of kind of religious practice in that way, but at the same time one is behaving inappropriately towards one's fellow sentient beings through developing jealousy or pride or attachment or hostility, then of course that those sentient beings do not become a ground for merit, but actually a ground for the propagation of mental affliction. So we have to be very, very careful in this regard. So as Master Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, with regard to the attainment of enlightenment, Buddhas and enlightened beings are of equal value in that regard. However, if we are showing respect on the one hand to Buddhas, but disrespect to sentient beings, what spiritual tradition is that? So this is of course relating to our own behaviors and pointing out that one should really examine one's own behaviors in regard to this. And so, as we said, if one makes an offering to the Buddha, it's always questionable whether that is an offering or not. However, when we are beneficial towards a sentient being, we can be assured that definitely is benefit, is an offering to the Buddhas. because of course the Buddhas take all sentient beings within their focus, and it's this process of having perfected that attitude of benefiting, looking after sentient beings like a child, like a mother looks after their only child. So that intensity, that level of focus that we're talking about, if we follow in that kind of focus, that kind of intensity, in the way that we care for, that we look after, that we benefit any one sentient being, then of course that is inevitably going to be pleasing and going to delight the Buddhas, because they've taken that on as their full reason for being. It's the same way even in a worldly sense. If we notice a parent showing a sense of love and cherishing to their child, it brings some sort of warm feeling to our own hearts, doesn't it? We are in some way pleased for them and by that. And in the same way, of course, the Buddhas feel that way when they are aware that we are benefiting others. And so if one wants to really kind of be guaranteed of making an offering to the Buddhas, then simply benefit other sentient beings. By that benefit, one will definitely be making the best kind of offering to the Buddhas. So it's important for us to not just know that, but to be absolutely crystal clear on it, because of course sometimes we do have a kind of a wrong emphasis and make a mistake in that regard. And so, why do we make offerings to the Buddhas anyway? It's not like the Buddhas need our offerings. They're in a kind of very pure state. They don't need contaminated offerings from our side. So what is going on there when we're making offerings? What we are doing is we're trying to create the causes, isn't it? To purify our own minds, to attain the state of enlightenment itself. So we must recognize that, or we must recognize that we must act in accordance with the spirit of that offering by being a benefit to others. If we are acting in any other way of really harming and really kind of like causing difficulty for other sentient beings, that's completely contradictory, isn't it? To make offerings on the one hand and then to behave in a way that's totally different to that. It's completely contradictory to what our aims are in the purpose of offering. So really what it comes down to is the inability to take the essence of the very act of offering. And so the Mahayana path is defined by the generation of that mind of enlightenment. But of course the very kind of quintessential point of the mind of enlightenment is that one is generating an attitude solely to focus on benefiting sentient beings, in following what the Buddha himself did. Generated the mind of enlightenment in order to benefit sentient beings, trained in the path on the basis of that mind of enlightenment purely for the benefit of sentient beings, manifested that mind of the state of enlightenment, and thereafter all activities are purely for the purpose of benefiting sentient beings. So if we want to emulate the Buddha, if we want to practice on the Mahayana, this is the focus that we must cultivate. And so these sentient beings that we keep mentioning, who are they? Are they somebody out there in the world, in some amorphous kind of place? No, they're the ones who are right beside us and out and beyond to countless sentient beings. And so that even though we may have the motivation, and that is it kind of like possible for us to kind of really be of benefit to all those countless sentient beings that we kind of mention and do that directly? No, that's not really possible in our current situation. So what is possible for us? It is possible for us to really benefit the ones, sentient beings who are next to us, who are close to us. And that this is a kind of training ground for us then to further extrapolate to all sentient beings. And so it's important then to kind of really set this focus very clearly and very firmly, and then understand that we can slowly habituate to doing our best for those who are next to us, close to us, where it's possible for us to engage in direct action to benefit others, and slowly expand on that. And so when we actually mention, I want to attain enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings, then it starts to instill that with a great deal more weight and a great deal more meaning, and that it really kind of like really expands our motivation and to increase our capacity more and more and do so. But it starts with those who are close to us, where we are genuine in our relationships with those who are close and next to us. Otherwise, there can be no transformation. If we're just saying the words without acting on it, it can be no transformation. And in fact, what we will be doing is mouthing these aspirations, but in fact deceiving the Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and deceiving sentient beings. There's nothing more crucial than getting this right. So we have to be extremely careful in this regard. That even when engaging in so-called spiritual practice, we may actually be simultaneously accumulating in negativity, and that even though we act in the name of spiritual tradition, we may be doing harm. So it's really the kind of down to the wire, nuts and bolts process of first of all recognizing what is meant by a spiritual practice, and secondly, how does one practice that spiritual practice, and that we recognize that what is really necessary in this regard is mindfulness and alertness. And this is not like a separate meditation where you kind of accumulate, you develop, cultivate mindfulness and alertness, but you must bring whatever mindfulness and alertness you have into all aspects of your practice, integrate it into every moment of your day, of your life. And this is constantly then really like an editing process of asking the hard question, is what I am about to do in line with spiritual teachings that I propose or that I pretend to follow? And this is like the process of alertness and mindfulness as bringing the mind to bear on how valid this motivation is, how valid is the action that is going to be the consequence of this motivation. And that this process is current, and then this process is in the checking at the end of the day, where one sees how well one adhered to one's motivation, and that if one didn't, then one engages in purification practices to purify, confess and purify that, but also recognizing where we did well and we did adhere to the motivation and we followed through, and that was a pure virtue, and to determine to support that kind of activity, to increase that activity in the future. And so this process of having something like a teaching from a teacher, engaging in the practice of that teaching, it makes cool common sense to say, how can I actually really integrate this into something that is part and parcel of my life. When I say practice, it means from the moment I get up to when I go to bed at night. And this is a process of making sure that I am looking after conducive conditions that will facilitate that practice, that benefiting others, and eradicating inconducive conditions that might get in the way, external and internal, my own attitudes. So this is the process of accumulating merit, as is known, and purifying obstacles. And this is not just like an isolated kind of process, but it's something that we use in conjunction with what we call practice in the everyday, integrating all this thinking into our actions and thinking over the course of a day. And in this way, this is like really facilitating the proper conditions in which we can transform our attitude. And it's not simply a case to say, confining what we call practice into sitting and meditating and developing a meditative concentration. It's rather making sure that we are facilitating our life through, and our practice through that purifying process and through that accumulating of merit process. And then after saying, now my mind is suitable, now my mind is ready for the cultivation of meditative concentration.
땡게지 공바디 에랑게 땡게 다가서도 다제도 튠잡라 튠게 내가 땡게지 공바디 아니 튠잡라 야 지금 가서도 야 수편도 요겠지 다 튠잡데 땡게지 가서 튠게 가서 봐봐 아니 거 지금 찍조를 진짜네 아니 지금 가서도 다 또봐 맞게 관에 공도 배지 물어봐
So,
근데 제가 전에 매게지 내가 민다고 니 입에서 그렇지 깜번이 민다고 내가 니 지금 입에서 그렇지 내가 줬어요
so that's this sort of really complete integration of our normal life into our practice, so that they are kind of indistinguishable, so that there is a very beneficial and efficient reciprocal relationship between our normal life, our normal activities in life, which feed into the actual session that we may formally take up, where we're engaging in meditative concentration, and as a result of that meditative concentration, that in turn feeds into the normal activities outside the session of our life and our practice. So to make that as seamless as possible is really the key. It's very important, and otherwise that we have a situation where we're maybe acting in ways that are not in harmony, that are not reciprocal. So it's like two different companies, with the same job, but taking totally different kind of like pathways to it.
뭐다 근데 서로 참 그건 가서 먼저 가리나 면은 모두 대화되고 동에 모두 대화돼야 되다 동에 셋업 됐다 가서 셋업 체도 아니 디 주마노와 아니 차상와 아니 고를 맞춰가지고 두고고요도 아니 가서 냠레도 제고고 잡아봐.
So we go back to what's really crucial for us, isn't it? We want happiness, and we don't want suffering. This is at the heart of it, and so this is the main job. So it's kind of obvious that we must in so many different ways, with so much subtlety, distinguish what that path is. That path is unmistaken, and that the path to the attainment of that goal is complete, and that is in the correct order, and all so that we can accumulate all the necessary causes to attain that result, and none of the unnecessary causes that won't lead to it.
기자 가와가와려서 야 이나 당고도 뒤균도 같이 먼저 제거해야 돼 먼저 땡두게 신경 써지만 그 땡두게 신경 거 하고나 되요 먼저 남들을 봤을 때 유도에 제대로 왔다 유도다 근데 저것도 말아서 간가게 빼주 저것도
And so it seems every time I reach this meditative stabilization section, my mind goes all over the place. But really, it's still extremely important, though, isn't it? To, whatever we are taking on, in fact, that we identify what the causes are that will lead to that result, and especially in relation to Buddhism, where the cause and effect relationship is really the whole background to any attainment in our spiritual life. So we have to identify what the correct causes are and then go after those causes in order to really hope to attain that particular result.
다가는 좀 아주 퇴마 잡을 시작하면도 다 강툭툭해 안티 인데 제와제 이만 못 주고도나 아니 냠내를 뽕째 강툭툭 강툭툭 제고도마다 다 근데 이제 그 퇴와 왔다 신고요 섬자 샤샤와이나 뭐 유튜브 그게 핑거도 유튜브에 마침 앞에 가라 아니 너무게 규차는 가요. 어떤 신고요 섬자 가게르샤.
And that this process of the combination of the learning and the and particularly the contemplation aspect of how we assimilate the information that we learn is extremely important in this regard. That this analytical process, or checking process, must be something that's ubiquitous in our thinking, in order that we really know what is the correct step to take now, what we should be doing in order to lay down the causes we want to lay down to achieve the result we want to achieve. Otherwise, it's something that we may have the best intention of doing, but in fact we are laying down causes that are completely infected by mental affliction, and then wonder why we're not gaining results. But we continually think that, oh yeah, I know. You know nothing, because you haven't really checked, you haven't really analyzed to really refine what you should refine.
근데 이면서 댕도가 시행요나 고토 안에 돈다한테 봐 제시 잡도나 아니 심바쓰기요라 낭도를 벌써 되지를 심바쓰기 못해 시행도 또 버려 다 낭도를 받쳐서 퇴바 삼바 퇴베 된데 야네 양도 삼로다는 삼중걸로지 삼베 된데 아니 들라 아니 그 세나도에서도 검잡잖아 아니 검잖아 또 받쳐서는 아니 신의 심바차기도 와 심바차기도 와
And so that of course the whole proposition within Buddhist knowledge and the assimilation of Buddhist knowledge is very much different to a modern education. It's in a way, Buddhism begins where modern education ends, in a way, and that it's not just the accumulation of facts and data, but rather that's the beginning of it. What then one must do is really put that to the test of one's own analysis. Does it stand up under analysis? How relevant can I make this to what I'm doing? And we have to refine that again and again and again. That what we gain from books, what we gain from others outside, is only ever going to be other powered. What the analytical process does is to make it your own. And you can really say, this is generated from my own power. And there it starts to have real meaning for you then. How easy is it then to actually, really assimilate or integrate that into your own life, to refine it more and more, to be able to gain it to the point of realization, a direct realization, for which of course we need to develop this meditative concentration in the form of mental acquiescence.
다 subject 도 좋아 이거 어떻게 딱 그냥 딱 나바들다 나 파진 두고 나는 나바들다 something 파진 라발 나자 something 뭐고 더 공부를 주면 다 something 라비야 주면 세지다 차와 대다고 되어
So just to go through the different outlines then, the fifth of the perfections is the perfection of meditative stabilization. It has 5 subsections. First of all, the definition of or nature of meditative concentration. Secondly, the means of entering into the practice of that. Thirdly, the divisions of meditative stabilization. Then how to practice it. And fifthly, a summary of those points. And so the nature of meditative stabilization is defined as a virtuous single-pointed mind which is undistracted in relation to its object. And so here again is pointing to the idea of a virtuous object being like the figure of a Buddha, and that not like figuring focused externally on a large statue or anything, but as small as possible, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to purchase a very small statue, but rather a small image that you're generating in your own mind. So the idea is here that one is generating meditative stabilization on an inner image in one's own mind. And so that we have roughly covered this aspect of meditative stabilization, or setting oneself up, like physically, one's physical posture in relation to that, and finding a comfortable seat, and that making sure that the spine is straight above all, whether one sits in the full Vajra posture or the semi-Vajra posture, that's up to one's own self. That the element of being comfortable is also very important. That one then maintains what's known as the 7 or 8 point Vairocana posture, being the Buddha symbolic of the purification of all the physical aspects of the body. And so here, this is said to have an important influence in that regard, and that one places the hands with the right on the left, with the thumbs gently touching and not pressed together, not apart, and held just below. So again, is pointing out, just like so, and held below the navel, resting, but with the arms out from the body slightly, so that air can pass between here, and then with the mouth not kind of loosely open or tightly closed, but resting in a natural posture, with the tongue touched to the roof of the mouth to prevent the flow of phlegm, and the eyes again resting as natural as possible, but not tightly closed or not wide open, but maybe left slightly open to avoid sleep and so on. And that all of these postures are designed to not only kind of facilitate the purification of negativities, but of course to maintain the mind on its object of focus. And so this is the key here, this internal image or object that the mind is focused on. So they said that the characteristics of the image of the Buddha that's used as one's focus, object of focus, is that it is, as we said, small as possible, but yet kind of heavy. We have this notion of it being heavy, but also in the nature of light. But bright. So it's the features of heaviness, but brightness, and small. It's very miniature. And so, from our point of view, at the beginning, one is probably not possible for us to start to really distinguish the different features of the Buddha's face, the details of the Buddha's body, etc. But rather, we should simply focus on that image of the Buddha that arises in our mind, and to kind of maintain that image in our mind stream, and to focus on that as much as possible at the outset, and to kind of like really in a way that we have our focus just on that image of the Buddha, so that it does not dissipate, the mind does not dissipate or become distracted onto anything else. So it's like that Kirkin is demonstrating what it's like when you begin, you try to focus on something, but you're distracted like in a big way and very, very quickly. So it's that trying to maintain focus simply and only exclusively on that image of Buddha in one's own mind stream. And that if one's the mind is starting to become really distracted into kind of thoughts of, oh gosh, what have I got to do for work tomorrow, what am I going to make for dinner tonight, and this other thing, I'm going to meet this friend. If you start to get really crowded in kind of quick succession like that, it's best to take a break, stop it altogether, and just take a break, drop the image, and then go back again, because you want quality, not quantity. You want to be really purely focused on what you're supposed to be focused on at the beginning, and to trying to maintain that for as long as possible, and to try to really work towards that the distractions coming from the senses are no longer manifest in the mind. They're not registering in your awareness, and that you are able to kind of maintain that focus, therefore, on what's internal and not reliant on any external stimulus. And so it's a very, very beginning in the beginning. It's very, very difficult. It's very important to do that. But you can see in the beginning it takes discipline, and it takes time to habituate, even with this process. And so at the outset, if you hear a small noise to the right or the left of you're actually going to physically turn and see what it is. So that's where we have to begin.
What is that? And that 당고도 미국 세부 마차에는 간장 손에 거다 미국도 정도에는 아니 세다 좀 정신 줘. 다다 가서 세비 이와만 보여서 세부 매부 참 걸. 안고 출마소나 추인데 포반나 룬인데 다 글라스에서 룬 마셔 저거 저거 마 이제 심데 아니 장마치 땅장으로 호었나 진짜. 다나 먼저 땅마치 차요 말해.
So what you're looking for is clarity, and so the reason why that doesn't happen at the outset is simply because there's so many distractions or latent distractions that are there, kind of impinging on and making demands on your attention and your focus. Again, I say it's like the glass with the dirt, you know, and you shake it and it's kind of like very murky, but after some time the dust settles and the glass, the water becomes clear again. So you got to have that image as well, that notion of when one persists again and again and again, bringing up the same image, that it will eventually become clearer.
다 세다 거다 지금 셈 레벨 탑 고선다 가지 그 내다 이래서 그 림바요 당번에 네트워크 요 말와 당번 셈시부 인도하자 그러나 인도하자 근데 되나야 야마 대양 초사 특장제 양 그래서 대양 제야 대 어디에 전다 주 이래서 간장소는 내셔도 도와서야 도와서 내도야자 안 되나 딜레 도와서 규리가 되나 딜레 안 되나 규리 못해 되나 추진이 순난다 내가 주고 봐 그 당부 막고는 요거 말와 그것도 이래서 아니 그 네가 셈 강투도 샤자 이내 셈 딤주도 배 가서도 롱다 간거까지 이제는 아니 롱파 있는 거야 셈 지나 구양 맞지 구양 뭐지 아니 미배 가라 간세세 대도했지 딤스도 루셈 간거 봐 딤전 아니 부수도 보내잖아 맞지 맞잖아 많이 봤어 셈 구양 뭐 참파 흘러봐는 구양 뭐 주도는 미배의 간세세 나도 맞잖아 미국의 강세세 나도가잖아 어디는죠 그 딤스도 롱다가 간의 팀에 많이 맞죠 그런데 애는 수부 배 탕치기 봐 수부 탕치기도 세면 탕치기도 그 지다 지금 루게는 지금 가서도 우다 롱다 주다도 저 당도 저 샤잖아 당도 저 샤는 셈파 회양 아니 미국의 강세세 나에 답시죠 이제 당에 맞죠 안 곰잠 롱랑다 줘야 되는 거라 그 시부 담 되려나 안 콘도 콘도 사이에 들이온 데도 그거도 그 지금 셈 샤단디 딱다 샤마도나 셈 구양보 샤에 셈 구양보 그 양아체 셈들 미바 스카세세 차리지
So one must understand that the process of developing meditative stabilization is done in stages, that you're moving from a position where you're really dominated by distraction to a point where you can hopefully really focus with clarity and with intensity on an object for up to 2, 3, 4 hours without problem. So it's obvious that this kind of practice, therefore, must be accumulated with, or must be accompanied by accumulation of merit and the purification of obstacles, practices. So it's like to create that energy where one can really get the most out of one's effort and focus. So and so again, at the beginning, this is going to be difficult because one can only focus for a very short time before one is overwhelmed by a distraction. But it is rewarded by persistence, and that if one is engaging in the right way, one will be rewarded by persistence. Like I said, that after some time one will be able to remain focused on that object for 2 to 3 hours without an issue. One major issue is that one begins with that too much tightness of the mind. And this often leads to what is known as a lung, or like wind imbalance in the body. And that can be a serious impediment. And so it's therefore really strongly advised that one starts at the outset and continues with a relaxed mind, but with a disciplined focus. And it's really the balance between these two that's really so important. So one maintains that relaxed overall attitude, mental attitude. And this is to avoid holding the body too tight and trying to force attention. And that brings what again is referred to as lung, or even anger actually can come from that too. So that's important, relaxed, but focused, clarity with regard to one's attention. So this is the process that we should adopt. If we don't, that sort of like trying to force ourselves to gain this meditative stabilization is going to result in exhaustion for both body and mind.
나 좀더 단다데 지게데 말 릴렉스 메디테이션 is 가야 삼로마 단제 메디테이션 어다 되는 말이야. 되는 거 거치 저 산제다 어때 저 미버 돈은 제비나 아니 들 저 산제게 질러 줘야 산제게 제수 숨에다 저 들어왔다 안데 간다 산제게 연대도 저 야네 양도 삼바다 저도 셈내자 저 랑게 쪼아 패사게 들라 셈을 거쳐요. 가나다 쪼아 가사 줘 봐다. 인자 산제게 연대도 저 돈 아니 제수 숨을 저 뭐도 저 나야 산제 도바샤게 도가다 유 뭐 바토나 산케나 칸데 야 뭐도 개바쇼 때베 징글라 소 때베 연대도 삼바다네 저 미버 돈제 what 아니 되게 열봐 도서 저꾸 외세리다 그 지딩데 유에데 아니 지와도 그거다 겁라 빠제 치시 지와도 그거 니르와 셈 초대다 셈 지와기네 세부면 차이티 와 뭐다 지와도 그거들 개바이 도와 도와다 그래도 그거 지딩데 유는 그거 뭐야 그거 숙충아 요에 아니 외세리 유나 아니 가서데 지와 뭐야 되게 개바이 숨도 와
And so this is but on the other hand, one must distinguish this meditative stabilization practice from what is very popular in the West. It is kind of using or even confining meditation to being some sort of a relaxation technique, where one simply, is kind of like spacing out in one's mind to relaxation. This is far from that. In fact, here one is choosing the object of a Buddha as one's object of focus, and wants to be able to sustain that focus. One actually considers the qualities of an enlightened being and starts to really develop a strong appreciation for those qualities. Because when we when we generate this sort of like warmth in the mind for the object that we're trying to focus on, is going to facilitate our ability to focus on that object. And so here, that's important, even to the point of where we say, I have such a real amazing appreciation of the qualities of the Buddha. It's just really wonderful, how wonderful it would be to be able to have those qualities, to attain that state. May I be able to attain that state. Oh, Guru Buddhas, please bless me to be able to perfect meditative stabilization as a means of doing that. And so it's important to do that. And then, of course, important to also understand the principal obstacles that are going to definitely be on the path to attaining meditative stabilization, and they are mental excitement and mental laxity, and many different variations and stages of mental excitement and mental laxity as well. And so the former is, of course, when the mind becomes as it were attracted to diversion, to becoming distracted through being agitated or excited. and then the other is this sense of kind of a mental stupor where one's mind sinks into a laxity and loses the intensity of focus.
sem tune sem nyomon be shawang de jona sanje le deba yima ina ya ana sanje le dawa yima ina sanje kula dawa ina ana sanje jiwa to ju ju sta sanje be ju lo ju su bu do ta de ndo ko tengi to ni ba shi ba ba tengi to ki
Of course, in the process of generating mental quiescence, sometimes known as calm abiding, what's mental stabilization as discussed here, that it can be generated not just on the basis of a Buddha image, but in terms of any object. One can use a flower to be able to generate this. But I said there's extra benefits, of course, to being able to choosing an image of the Buddha on which to develop such concentration. I think it's in the it says in the White Lotus Sutra, where it states that even if one looks with a distracted mind of faith on an image of the Buddha, it generates a cause in one's mind to attain a state of enlightenment. And this is true to the power of the object. And this is the reason why, the holy beings recommend to have Buddha statues everywhere, as many as possible. And that not just in terms of making offerings to those Buddhas, but in fact that anybody who sees, glances at those Buddhas will receive or will accumulate cause to attain the state of enlightenment on the basis of that, due to the power of the object. And so, like as I was discussing last week in the context of practice, that one can facilitate meditative meditation on developing of meditative stabilization in the context of a morning practice where we are also using the breath, for example, just on the basis of breathing in and out, to breathe out any thing that disturbs or distracts our mind, our focus, and to breathe in all the conducive conditions to being able to generate meditative stabilization. And you can do that over the course of the 21 full exhalations and inhalations as a practice in itself, that will again bring the mind more in tune with and in line with meditative stabilization. And that to also approach this particular subject, this particular practice, in a kind of more of a determined but long-term, almost casual way, in that one first is trying to establish the whole habit of even meditation itself, let alone meditative stabilization. The actual sitting, the actually taking time out. And so therefore it's important that it's kind of really short sessions but of high quality that are very important. Even just 5 minutes at the outset is very, very important. And just to kind of like not even consider it as kind of meditative session or meditative practice, but simply I'm just going to reflect on the Buddha as much as I can for the next 5 minutes and try to sustain some sort of consistency of the image in one's own mind. And that do those kind of sessions whenever one can, and then slowly, if one has time, lengthen those sessions, build it up more and more and more, formalize it more and more and more, but to enter into it in a kind of relaxed fashion.
아니 지단 가서데 랑게 다 지금 수다 뒤로 렉자 된데게 가서데 다 지금 된데게 옹시에게 나보데라 아니 딜라 지금 가서데 뒤 상황도 마다치네 아니 이시 뭐도 균네 이시 랑게 로라 차답체 어딘데 지네 센도 딜라 검시에 또 자잖아 알아서 가서 검시 숙청부제 공비 시험한테 줄라 상황도 지네 검시 숙청부 실조라 뒤 검시에 또 숙청도 다네 숙청도 다네 아니 이시 다 되네다 고로 공부 야부지구나 아니 그로 차다 로 참으면 주도에 좀 제국부 열봐 제국부 열다 다다 남자도 연구한테 얘네 공비 시험한테 줄라 내가 또 그때 또 예수 잡죠 다는 뭐 공비 시험을 내가 시주고 다 빅세게 들어가자다 가서 아이폰 다 지어 되는 배지 시고지 지전 공부 시험을 내가 시고 미군의 남주의 배주시라 땅 먹어 이제 전 간자서는 코페 톨라도 있는 거 도와 뒤또 예수지 뒤또 예수때 아니 이시들라 그 지금 좀전도나 삼로지 다 좀전도나 될 삼로 코아들 아니 셈도 내다 지지
So again to also consider the kind of our own current status prior to embarking on the development of meditative concentration. This is quite practical, quite important, and that the first port of call will be to understand the degree to which we are dominated by distractions related to the senses. So whether it's our eye sense, ear sense, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch, the body itself, that we can see how much we are habituated to reacting from any sort of impulse from those senses, and so we are reducing the kind of like these reactions and reducing the propensity to react to the objects of the senses and increasing our appreciation for and concentration on just mental consciousness itself, the internal consciousness. And so this is, on the road to really an initial step to accessing more and more subtle levels of concentration or consciousness, with the ultimate goal of attaining access to the most subtle levels of consciousness itself. But of course, this is not this is not kind of accessible to us now. This is not open to us now, but it is in kind of same direction. So we are going internal. We are focusing on our mental consciousness. We are setting up an image that we will focus on in our mental consciousness. And so one takes that as a definite step away from our habit of really catering to just the objects of the other senses. And in a world dominated by phones, iPhones and so on, we can see how much we are a slave to these kinds of external stimuli now. So it's kind of important to lay that aside as well and say, okay, a break from the technology. I'm just going to go inside and concentrate internally now.
해봐도 내봐도 안디 제바체네 안디 톤에 도간 쇼아이나 잡을 욕다 시작이 오는 거죠. 욕다 가 되려도 와. 공부 시작하지 디 개체부지 디 유디 개체부지 안디다 되어도 맞잖아. 차 디다 되어 맞도 맞잖아. 마가 왔잖아. 아니 차도다 시작하면서 걔네들이 대되기도 와.
In fact, when you're looking at the kind of like the conflicting outcomes of emphasis on these external senses and the emphasis on an internal mental consciousness. On the one hand, you see so much of world difficulties and world troubles arise from our adherence to an emphasis on the external senses, and in either trying to satisfy the objects of those senses and thereby feeding attachment, or getting frustrated because we're not able to satisfy the objects of those senses, and then feeding mental afflictions like jealousy and pride and so on, and anger. So you see, it's so much of the trouble and hassle of the world arises just on that basis. And so it would be far more better for the individual and the world if we actually reduce the level of importance with which we held the objects of the external senses, the operation of the external senses, and indeed really started to highlight the importance of just an internal reality, and to really refine that internal consciousness. And this is the process of using reasoning in order to gain conviction, and that this is not just in terms of practical benefits in the world, but also in terms of developing topics like meditation, developing our own meditation. And so it's important to proceed in any sort of adventure on the basis of reality, isn't it? And so we don't get that sense of reality just by relying on the data arising from the objects of the senses. It's important to realize that there is a limitation to what we can verify in terms of the objects of the senses and our interpretation of what we see and hear and so on. And that when we have a more well-developed internal reality by considering the reasoning process of mental consciousness, we're likely through developing reasoning and more specifically valid reasoning on that basis to more closely align with reality. So again, didn't go very far, sorry. Leave it there for today. And so, yet what's most important is that we try to develop a little meditation practice to aim for quality in that practice over quantity. That the object that we choose to focus on is not out there externally, but that which appears from the mind. And that we should not play with that object when it does appear in the mind, but to see just as it is, as it appears, and to maintain one's focus on that object, that object of the Buddha in our minds.
단도 주쟁 가시 검자다 제랑선에는 검자된 거 이내 쟁 촌 수고요 맞다 니보 좀 되고 요라 대촌 공부샤고 그거 주쟁 가시 구상샤와 된도 때다 제랑 이제 선수 이내 공부시발라 그거 되고 요 말때 이내 모두 따다 즉시 되고 이것을 좀 니보 좀 이시를 차다 유찬에 한테가 제적이 내가 는 거요.
So we see there are, examples of great practitioners who even meditate with their eyes wide open.
Some
yogis. But of course they're not observing with the eyes. They are completely internally focused on the object appearing in their mental consciousness at that time. But this is the way that facilitates their practice. And we dedicate the virtue and that we have accumulated here, so that all the holy beings who reside in this world may lead long lives, may all obstacles to their good health be removed, and may their holy wishes be fulfilled, particularly in relation to benefiting other sentient beings. That we also dedicate that all conflict may be removed from the world, and that it may be dealt with, whether international or regional or domestic conflict, through peaceful means where we have a dialogue of mutual respect. And that also in terms of the environment, that degenerated environments may be regenerated, that those who that are still pure may be protected, and that we see as the means of enabling both those processes, being the sense of satisfaction that human beings generate and realize with what they have, and that may be so as well. So we do the Lam Rim dedication prayer, or sorry, the Lam Rim prayer. From my two collections, vast as space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief and leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I behold your loving passion for all lives and industry. May I find the best of complete greater paths of the teachings. May I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the point of the path as I have discerned them, may I hold those teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this great path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their children. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path raised by all the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may always show prosperity spread everywhere. And Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Sankapa, crown jewel of the sages of land of snows, Lois and Dragba at your feet, make requests.